Hello everyone. Today, we're digging into the tale of a ruthless crime boss, Yang Shunchang. On the surface, Yang Shunchang was the chairman of the Mianyang Ready-Mix Concrete Association, a polished businessman admired by all. But beneath that glossy exterior, he was the kingpin of Mianyang City's largest criminal empire. Starting in the 1990s, Yang Shunchang rounded up a crew of unemployed drifters and ex-cons to build a gang he ruled with an iron fist. They exploited the murky ties between business and the underworld, channeling profits from legit ventures into fueling their criminal exploits. With this, they locked down a monopoly over Mianyang's commercial markets, even calling the shots on industry prices. Through sheer violence, they crushed their rivals, racking up over 40 crimes. Organized brawls, coerced deals, illegal mining, and extortion. The most notorious incident erupted at the Shiyuan village construction site. To keep his project on track, Yang Shunchang unleashed over 300 goons to clash with local villagers, leaving hundreds injured. Even the cops sent to intervene didn't escape the bloodshed. After the dust settled, he paid a pack of teenagers 1,000 renminbi a day to take the blame. His cruelty was off the charts. Born in 1962 in Mianyang, Yang Shunchang was the baby of the family, spoiled beyond reason from day one. Anything good or flashy was reserved for him, which turned him lazy, cocky, and insufferably bossy. Yet his parents were just regular workers, barely scraping by, not nearly enough to fund his lavish tastes. Whenever he saw a friend with something new, Yang resorted to brute force to snatch it. The school called his parents in repeatedly, but they brushed it off as childish antics, refusing to care. Eventually, the school lost patience and kicked him out, the start of a criminal streak. Once expelled, Yang started drifting through society, falling in with a rough crowd of slackers. From a young age, he picked up smoking, drinking, and haunting entertainment hotspots like bars and karaoke joints. As his social circle grew, so did his expenses. The pocket money from his family couldn't keep up, so he teamed up with his buddies for petty theft. But after a few jobs, he realized it wouldn't make him rich. Their victims were just average folks with nothing special to steal. To strike it big, he needed to target the well-off, especially businessmen flush with cash. Problem was these guys didn't stroll down the street. They drove cars, their money stashed tight inside. So to get at it, Yang cooked up a vicious plan, faking tire blowouts. He and his crew practiced day and night to perfect the sound. Once they nailed it, they'd lurk by the roadside, waiting for a car to pass, then mimic the noise. Drivers, hearing it, would pull over to check their tires, giving Yang's gang the perfect chance to yank the door open and grab whatever was inside. It wasn't genius, but it was fresh for its time, and their heists almost always paid off. By the 1990s, as entertainment hubs boomed across China, Yang used his stolen cash to open gambling dens. With money and slick scams, he lured Mianyang's big shot bosses into the gambling game. These guys played hard, betting sums that could hit hundreds of millions or even tens of millions of RMB. In the 90s, that was a fortune, enough that a single lucky night could land Yang a plot of land or hundreds of storefronts. But when luck ran dry, the losses piled up too. Still, with his gangster grit, he'd keep the table locked down until he came out on top. No one could leave unless he won. Local merchants seethed at this nonsense, but didn't dare speak up. Beyond gambling, Yang pulled off scams, extorted cash, and illegally detained people for massive profits. Those he blackmailed stayed silent, cowed by his power. But it wasn't always smooth sailing. Once, a guy named Wang won over 100,000 renminbi at Yang's casino. Seeing this, Yang's face darkened. He ordered his thugs to grab Wang and drag him to a hotel. There, Yang cranked the air conditioning to freezing, forced Wang into a cold shower, and terrorized him until he confessed to cheating. Then, Yang didn't just confiscate the winnings. He made Wang sign a 100,000 renminbi IOU. After that ordeal, Wang couldn't take it anymore and reported Yang to the police. As a result, Yang Shunchang landed in jail. Yet even a few months behind bars didn't change him. Fresh out, he jumped right back into his old ways, recruiting more jobless punks and ex-cons as muscle for his crimes. Over time, He built a sprawling criminal syndicate under his command. In 2007, Yang leveraged his clout to start a concrete company in Mianyang. He rolled out a black-to-business, business-to-black model locally, blending commerce with underworld muscle. He didn't just collect protection fees from concrete suppliers. He banned any rival companies from operating on his turf. Entrepreneurs trying to set up concrete firms in Mianyang faced brutal ambushes and beatdowns from his crew. After those incidents, no one dared do business in his domain. Then came 2008, when a massive Wenchuan earthquake hit. Post-disaster rebuilding was a gold mine in Yang's eyes. He pounced on the chance, using companies like Mianyang Chenglong Concrete and Mianyang Building Materials Company, plus threats and his underworld sway, to strong-arm other businesses into submission. He even founded the Mianyang Ready-Mix Concrete Association and crowned himself chairman. With that title, Yang brazenly carved up Mianyang's concrete market, pocketing the lion's share profits and tossing scraps to the rest. He didn't just monopolize sales and set prices in the ready-mix concrete game. He used violence to punish anyone who defied his rules, cementing his ruthless reputation. In July 2015, as construction began on the Mianyang Central Hospital, a developer named Qian refused to use the pricey concrete products dictated by Yang Shunchang. The fallout was swift. Qian started getting threatening calls from Yang's crew. But Qian wouldn't back down. He stood his ground, sparking Yang's fury. Yang warned Qian to show up at the Haiyang Jingti house immediately to apologize or face the consequences. Frightened by Yang's threats, but unwilling to cave, Qian reluctantly told his driver, Lai Mao, to take him there. What awaited them, though, was a savage beating. The moment they pulled into the parking lot, over a dozen thugs armed with steel pipes and knives swarmed them. Without a word, the mob attacked relentlessly. In the chaos, Lai Mao took a brutal stab wound, and Qian, seeing the violence spiral toward a possible murder, dropped to his knees, begging Yang for mercy. Yang called off his men but boasted arrogantly, "If someone dies, I'll just hire a fall guy, so anyone who crosses me ends up regretting it." His brazenness was staggering. Beyond directing his lackeys to do dirty work, Yang repeatedly rallied hundreds of underworld figures for his criminal schemes, paying them to join in. The most infamous clash happened at the Shiyuan village construction site. Using his clout, Yang had snagged a rock and soil construction project at a medical school site in Shiyuan village, on the outskirts of Mianyang. To keep things running smoothly, he rounded up about 300 men armed with clubs and stormed the site, brutally beating the locals. On the day of the incident, Yang sent his crew to form a gang of thugs, dropping them off near Shiyuan village. He handed out hard hats and iron rods, not just for their protection, but to tell his men apart from the villagers and avoid friendly fire. White hard hats went to the ringleaders, red ones to the regular goons. Anyone without a hat? Obviously a villager. Fair game for a thrashing. That day, police got a flood of calls from locals and raced to the scene to take control. But when Yang's gang spotted the cops, instead of backing off, they turned their clubs on them too. Several officers ended up badly injured and hospitalized. Not far from the chaos, Yang lounged in an Audi, gleefully orchestrating the attack. He'd planned the timing, escape routes, and even set aside cash to cover injuries for his crew. The rampage left hundreds of innocent villagers and police officers seriously hurt. To dodge accountability, Yang shelled out 90,000 renminbi to hire 3 teenagers to take the rap. Before they turned themselves in, he funded their partying spree and promised each 1,000 renminbi a day while they played the scapegoats. Yang wielded money and power to break the law with impunity. For over 20 years, he held Mianyang in his grip, his syndicate ballooning into the region's biggest criminal outfit. They pulled off over 40 major crimes, 19 different charges from assault to organized brawls to racketeering. That's just the big ones. Smaller fights were too many to count. Their illegal profits soared past 200 million renminbi, unmasking the dark truth. As the saying goes, walk in the dark long enough, and you'll eventually meet a ghost. When a nationwide crackdown on organized crime kicked off, Mianyang police set their sights on dismantling Yang's empire. They deployed elite squads to investigate, but it was a tough slog. Though they knew Yang was the ringleader, details on his crew were scarce, and most leads were vague whispers. Direct evidence was hard to come by. Victims and witnesses, terrified of retaliation, stayed silent, refusing to spill the truth to authorities. This stonewalling made the investigation a nightmare. During the probe, Mianyang police found themselves tailed closely by Yang's men. To keep the team safe, the task force went undercover, moving their base to a discreet spot 20 kilometers from downtown. There they worked in secret, quietly reaching out to victims and insiders. After over a month of relentless effort, the task force struck gold while reviewing a case tied to Lai Mao and the Mianyang Ready-Mix incident. After that beating, Lai Mao took hush money from Yang and kept quiet. Yang then tapped a lackey to confess in his place. When investigators tracked down Lai Mao, he clammed up, but they spotted oddities in a blurry, few-second clip from the scene. The guy who surrendered only showed up after Lai Mao was injured, proving he wasn't in on the attack. This thread unraveled the truth. Yang had orchestrated teens to take the fall, covering his tracks. Beyond that, they cracked open other cases where Yang hid evidence, obstructed witnesses, shielded crooks, and dodged justice. At 5 a.m. on May 7, 2018, armed with solid proof, Mianyang police mobilized over 320 officers, 40 squad cars, police dogs, and weapons to nab key syndicate members across Chengdu, Mianyang, Jiangyu, and Santai. The sheer force caught Yang off guard. He had no chance to resist. When nabbed, his hands were tied behind his back, a black hood over his head, flanked by 2 SWAT officers. The once mighty crime lord looked downright pathetic, a far cry from his former swagger. Afterward, Mianyang police urged the public to share tips on Yang Shunchang's crimes. This time, victims of his gang's terror stepped forward, no longer silenced. Over nearly 2 years of dogged investigation, the task force spanned over 10 provinces and cities, rounding up 29 more members. They froze and seized 26 million renminbi in cash, confiscated 169 antiques, including 2 national treasures and 5 third-grade relics worth about 8 million renminbi, nabbed cars valued over 10 million renminbi, locked down 5 commercial plots in central Mianyang plus over 100 storefronts, and seized over 50 concrete mixers and 200,000 cubic meters of sand and gravel. The total haul tied to the case topped 200 million renminbi. On December 31st, 2019, the Mianyang Intermediate People's Court opened Yang Shunchang's trial. He was sentenced to 25 years in prison, with all assets confiscated. The other 37 defendants got 6 to 19 years each. After ruling Mianyang for over 20 years, Yang's syndicate was finally uprooted. His 2-decade reign of intimidation and violence crumbled thanks to the courage of those who spoke out and the relentless resolve of law enforcement. In the shadowy alleys and bustling streets of Amsterdam, one name has become a chilling legend feared by both criminals and law enforcement alike: Ridouan Taghi. He wasn't just a ruthless drug kingpin, he was a cold-blooded monster, unflinching in his readiness to destroy anyone who dared stand in his way. With a cocaine empire worth hundreds of millions of euros and a trail of bodies left in his wake, Taghi struck fear across Europe. But his arrogance and brutality eventually came at a price as the ghosts of his past resurfaced, igniting a relentless pursuit that no one could predict how it would end. Ridouan Taghi's life, believed to be the leader of a transnational cocaine trafficking cartel, was never straightforward, especially as one of Europe's most wanted fugitives. He embodied a deadly combination: immense wealth and sheer ruthlessness. Taghi's empire extended far and wide. He orchestrated the trafficking of tons of cocaine worldwide, ordered brutal killings of those who opposed him, and didn't hesitate to take the life of a prominent Dutch journalist in broad daylight. A stark warning to anyone bold enough to defy him. Born on December 20th, 1977 in northern Morocco, Taghi's family migrated to the Netherlands in 1980. He quickly became involved with the street gang the Bad Boys, a disorganized group focused on petty thefts. However, this chaotic environment served as the breeding ground for his criminal career. In 1992, Taghi faced his first arrest, charged with theft and illegal possession of weapons. This was merely the beginning. 2 years later, at 17, he dropped out of school and ventured into hashish smuggling, the first drug he ever dealt with. But Taghi soon realized that true wealth and power lay in something far more lucrative: cocaine trafficking. Despite his criminal record, Taghi maintained an eerie level of discretion, evading law enforcement scrutiny for years. He understood that to rise to the top, he needed to remain invisible, avoiding any contact with the authorities. It wasn't until 2013 that his name first appeared in police reports. Spanish authorities began hearing whispers about him after another Moroccan man was murdered in Spain. Sparse details started emerging, confirming that Taghi was a major player in the drug trade. However, these leads were passed to Dutch police and soon buried in paperwork. For years, the world seemed to forget about Taghi. But in 2015, everything changed. A former associate, Ibrahim Boujou, decided to expose Taghi and his right-hand man, said Rizuki. Boujou knew his days were numbered. He was on Taghi's hit list after aiding in the kidnapping of a cafe owner, one of Taghi's close friends. 2015 was also the year police apprehended a group of criminals in a large arms bust. After cracking encrypted PGP messages on their phones, investigators uncovered direct links to Taghi's network. His dark shadow loomed larger than ever before. Taghi's name now drew significant attention from law enforcement. But by the time the authorities mounted a serious effort to capture him, it was too late. Ridouan Taghi had amassed unimaginable wealth in record time, enough to buy himself freedom, power, and a fortress of secrecy. It may have been one of the shrewdest moves he ever made. While the police fumbled in the shadows, Ridouan Taghi quietly built himself a cocaine empire that became one of the largest in the world. By the end of 2015, Taghi's power and brutality were beginning to come into full view. No longer content to operate from the shadows, he emerged as a merciless predator, showing no tolerance for opposition. Anyone who stood in his way paid the ultimate price, and the methods he used to eliminate obstacles were horrifyingly ruthless. In 2015, he ordered the murder of a shop clerk merely because he suspected without evidence that the man had shared information about him with the police. On April 17, 2016, Samir Aragib was assassinated simply because Taghi believed he had leaked information about him. Samir, aware of the danger he was in, had gone into hiding, but this only enraged Taghi further. Losing patience, he put a €1 million bounty on Samir's head, instructing his hitmen to kill not just him, but his entire family, simply to avoid dirtying his own hands. A few days after Samir left his house, the assassins lay in wait. When Samir returned, they ambushed him, shooting him dead in his car. The most horrifying part? Samir's 7-year-old daughter was sitting right beside him when it happened. The assassin later confessed that the presence of the little girl was the only reason he didn't fire a final bullet into Samir's head. Though she survived physically unharmed, the emotional scars she carried would never heal. On May 9, 2016, Abderrahim Belhaj met a similar fate. Accused of stealing 2 bricks of cocaine from Taghi valued at about €100,000, an amount Taghi considered pocket change, he was killed. The murder wasn't about the money, it was a grim message. No one steals from Taghi and gets away with it. The price of betrayal was death. Then on December 8, 2016, Martin Koch, a crime blogger, was gunned down in his car. Martin had regularly written about Taghi and other notorious criminals. Earlier that year, he had survived a car bomb attempt. But on December 8th, as he walked through the streets, an assassin approached him from behind and tried to shoot him in the head. The gun jammed, unaware of his narrow escape. Martin went about his day, but the killers were determined. That evening, as Martin got into his car, they fired without hesitation, ending his life. In January 2017, Taghi ordered the assassination of another person he suspected of leaking information about him. But this time, his carefully orchestrated plans backfired spectacularly. In a chaotic and poorly executed attempt, the assassins killed the wrong person. This blunder marked the beginning of Taghi's downfall. Police in Dubai later reported that Taghi was visibly shaken when he realized the repercussions of this mistake. Dubai had long been a haven for the world's most notorious criminals, a glittering sanctuary where fugitives could escape the clutches of the law, revel in the city's opulence, and continue running their international drug operations from the shadows. They believed they were untouchable, but the Dubai police were preparing to change that narrative, determined to dismantle the criminal networks thriving within their city. Dubai authorities began an aggressive crackdown targeting fugitives who had sought refuge there. After tracking over 10 individuals linked to Taghi, investigators finally zeroed in on a luxurious villa they suspected was his hideout. The villa appeared abandoned, its windows shuttered. No vehicles parked outside, and no sign of activity during the day. However, at night, a lone man would emerge to take out the trash, the only clue suggesting someone lived there. What the police didn't expect was that the man hiding inside was none other than Ridouan Taghi, the mastermind behind one of the most violent criminal organizations in history. Taghi never left his villa. He lived under constant surveillance, relying on a single confidant to assist him. This man handled everything, delivering food and medicine, taking out the trash, and performing all the tasks necessary for Taghi to survive while hidden in the shadows. Once the Dubai police were certain that someone was hiding in the villa, they immediately devised a plan to raid it. The police only had a 10-year-old photo of Taghi, making it uncertain whether he still resembled the man in the picture or had altered his appearance. Speculation even arose in Dutch newspapers that he might have undergone plastic surgery to change his face. When the Dubai police stormed the villa, it didn't take long to find a man sitting in one of the rooms. The man was utterly shocked by their sudden appearance. He froze, unable to react, and surrendered without resistance. When the police confirmed his identity, disbelief filled the room. It was Ridouan Taghi, one of the world's most violent criminals and a notorious drug lord. As they searched the villa, the police uncovered stacks of cash hidden under sofas, Dutch magazines detailing his crimes, and an assortment of laptops and smartphones. When they captured him, Taghi had been casually drinking wine and watching television, oblivious that his luxurious lifestyle was about to come crashing down. Taghi admitted to the police that he had become a prisoner of his own making, paranoid and trapped in isolation for years. He was immediately extradited to the Netherlands on a private, heavily guarded flight, escorted by additional aircraft to ensure absolute security during the journey. After years of smuggling tons of drugs, committing ruthless murders, and amassing hundreds of millions from his criminal empire, Ridouan Taghi was finally caught. He now faces the harsh reality of life in a maximum security Dutch prison. Not only is he confronting endless days behind bars, but he also faces an intense legal battle with the Dutch judiciary, determined to bring him to justice. Prosecutors are working tirelessly to pin the full extent of his horrifying crimes on him. A string of murders, countless tons of cocaine flooding the streets, and a criminal empire built on blood and suffering. But the most chilling revelation is that the authorities now have a key informant, someone Taghi would never have expected. Do you remember the assassin who mistakenly killed the wrong target on Taghi's orders? The victim happened to be a close friend of one of the gang's top members. Stricken with guilt and unable to live with the burden of his mistake, the assassin decided to cooperate with the police. Now he has become the judiciary's most valuable source of information and Taghi's greatest adversary. However, by the time Taghi discovered this betrayal, it was too late. In retaliation, Taghi and his gang murdered the informant's brother and even his lawyer, hoping to silence him. But the damage was already done. The truth was out, and Taghi's criminal empire was unraveling. From a petty thief to a hash smuggler, and finally one of the world's most dangerous and ruthless cocaine traffickers. This is the story of Ridouan Taghi, a man who ordered murders with chilling indifference, treating the destruction of lives as if it were just another routine task. Now, with all evidence stacked overwhelmingly against him, Ridouan Taghi's life appears to have reached its inevitable conclusion. He is staring down the prospect of life imprisonment, destined to spend his remaining days in a maximum security prison with no hope of escape. His crimes have etched themselves into the annals of criminal history, but what will become of him now that everyone he wronged, from family members of his victims to his former allies, has risen to testify against him? What are your thoughts on the story of Ridouan Taghi? Is he one of the most ruthless criminals of all time, or merely a product of a world consumed by greed and violence? On January 10th, 2020, the internet was shaken by a gruesome video capturing the last breaths of La Katrina, a notorious cartel assassin. She had once confidently flaunted her weapons and curves on social media, but misfortune struck when her hideout was attacked by enemies. This is the story of the female drug lords who dared to face evil. On February 18th, 2011, de Tauno, Ciudad Pedro de Alvarado, Guatemala was buzzing with excitement and anticipation for the upcoming local election. In a cozy hotel, Mayra Lemus, a mayoral candidate, was enjoying lunch with her loyal supporters. However, none of them knew that death was lurking outside. Suddenly, two armored trucks pulled up in front of the hotel. A group of masked men stormed in armed with rifles and opened fire on the panicked diners. Blood splattered. Screams of terror echoed through the air, and 8 people lay dead, including Mayra. This was not the first time Mayra had been targeted for assassination. In June 2006, while she and her family were returning home, gunmen ambushed their car. Mayra survived with minor injuries, but her niece paid the price with her life right before her eyes. Who wanted Mayra dead and why? The answer was simple. Mayra was a notorious drug kingpin, one of the queens of Guatemala's underworld. With cruelty and violence, she ruled her drug empire with an iron fist, deciding who would live and who would die. The townspeople lived in fear of her name, as her ruthlessness knew no bounds. Rumor had it that Mayra had killed her own husband and buried his body in a desolate area, but his remains were never found, and she was never suspected in his disappearance. But that wasn't the end of her reign of terror. Mayra had the entire city and police force in her grip with ambitions to conquer the entire country. No one dared to challenge her authority. Except for one. Mayra's only remaining political rival was Roberto Marroquin Fuentes, the leader of a competing criminal gang. He thirsted for control of the drug market, and to achieve that, Mayra and her family had to be eliminated. When Mayra was killed, Roberto became the prime suspect, but he had a solid alibi, claiming he wasn't at the scene when the massacre occurred. Mayra's sister, Marixa, refused to believe it. She was determined to avenge her sister's death. Marixa was no less formidable than Mayra. She inherited her sister's drug empire and harbored a burning hatred. Marixa made 3 failed assassination attempts on Roberto, yet each time he miraculously escaped death. Whether it was luck or heavy protection, or both, he managed to survive. Before she could attempt a 4th assassination, Marixa was arrested and thrown into prison. Even behind bars, the flames of vengeance still burned within her. She escaped twice, each time leaving Roberto in a state of fear. After her second escape, she was transferred to a high-security military prison. However, rumors persist that Marixa is still plotting, waiting for the perfect opportunity to break free once again to finally exact her revenge for her beloved sister. Mayra, as the ghosts of the past return, what fate awaits them? The story isn't over yet, and the blood-soaked paths are still waiting for the tireless footsteps of Marixa. The invincible assassin La Colita, a famous name in Mexico's underworld, is known as a fearless heat woman, always challenging death at every turn. She didn't serve just one, but 2 ruthless gangs, La Nueva Familia Michoacana and Los Viagras. With her alluring appearance and sharp intelligence, Colita built a fearsome reputation not only for her killing abilities, but also for her recklessness and lack of mercy. Wherever Colita appeared, danger followed. However, her bold social media posts and YouTube videos became the double-edged sword that ultimately sealed her fate. In one file, she was known as Lucy Cruz. In another, Castillo Hernandez. She used social media to flaunt her accomplishments, mock her enemies, and challenge even the most powerful criminals. Colita didn't hesitate to post videos and photos of herself with guns, money, and drugs. She even went so far as to insult El Menco, the leader of the Jalisco New Generation cartel, CJNG, a man notorious for his brutal violence and ties to thousands of murders. He had once been a police officer before becoming one of the most wanted criminals in both Mexico and the U.S., surpassing even Joaquin El Chapo Guzman. Simply put, El Mencho was not someone anyone wanted to provoke. But La Colita didn't care. She truly believed she was untouchable, even feeling invincible. However, it wasn't long before that arrogance led her to a fatal mistake. In November 2020, she posted a video where she criticized CJNG, calling them cowards for abandoning a truck loaded with weapons. In the video, she relentlessly mocked, taunted, and provoked El Mencho. That was the moment when her boldness would cost her everything. Shortly after, La Khalida disappeared without a trace, and no one knew what had happened to her. Some rumors claimed she had been kidnapped and tortured by CJNG, while others suspected she had been killed, her body dumped in a mass grave. There were even claims that La Khalida was still alive, hiding somewhere, waiting for the right moment to strike back. But one thing was certain: when you dare to challenge El Mencho, you don't meet a good end. And with all her arrogance, La Khalida may have lost her chance at survival without even realizing it. This brutal game wasn't just about survival, it was an unimaginable war, where boldness and ambition could lead to death in the blink of an eye. Would she return and face her enemies, or would she remain just a memory of a great assassin? La Khalida's story isn't over yet, and surprises still lie ahead. In September 2012, a cold bullet ended the life of the cocaine queen Griselda Blanco, the woman who built one of the most brutal drug cartels in history. As the queen of cocaine, she instilled fear not only in Miami, but throughout the global underworld. Griselda Blanco, a Colombian drug lord, had entered the drug trade long before the name Pablo Escobar became widely known. While Escobar reigned in the 1980s, Blanco was the queen of the 1970s with a bloodlust unmatched by anyone. During her violent reign, she created numerous enemies in both Colombia and the US. Blanco didn't hesitate to eliminate anyone in her way, orchestrating drive-by shootings, motorcycle assassinations, and even daring attacks on her rivals' homes. She was believed to be responsible for at least 200 murders, with some sources suggesting the number could be as high as 2,000. A former detective once said that people feared her so much that her reputation preceded her wherever she went. She wasn't born for a peaceful life. At just 11 years old, Blanco was accused of kidnapping a boy for ransom, and when the parents didn't pay, she coldly ended his life. The horrors she inflicted on others were a reflection of the trauma she had endured at home. She fled her abusive family and lived on the streets of Medellin, where she learned to survive by stealing and selling herself. The opportunity to turn crime into a bigger operation came when she met Carlos Trujillo, a human smuggler who illegally brought immigrants into the US. They had 3 sons together, but the marriage quickly fell apart, and Blanco ordered Trujillo's murder, making him the first of 3 husbands to die by her hand. Her second husband, Alberto Bravo, introduced her to the world of cocaine. They moved to Queens, New York, where they built a massive drug empire, pushing the Italian mafia out of the market. Here, Blanco earned the name Godmother. She invented incredibly clever ways to transport cocaine. Young, attractive women hiding cocaine in their underwear while boarding planes. This plan worked for a long time, bringing her a huge fortune, but her newfound fame also brought unforeseen dangers. In 1975, Blanco and Bravo were arrested in a major NYPD and DEA operation named Operation Banshee. Before she could be prosecuted, Blanco managed to escape back to Colombia, where she ruthlessly killed her husband, Bravo, in a shootout over missing millions. Having evaded justice, she continued sending cocaine to the US by any means possible. In 1976, she was accused of smuggling cocaine on a ship called Gloria during a commemorative race at the port of New York. She then decided to move to Miami, where she became the queen of cocaine, building a cocaine trafficking empire and distributing drugs nationwide with her cunning. She lived in luxury, owning lavish homes, expensive cars, and even a private jet. Everything seemed to be within her reach. However, while enjoying her opulent lifestyle, she never forgot that she was playing a deadly game in Miami. Formidable rivals like the Medellin cartel were lurking, and it was only a matter of time before a territorial war broke out, turning South Florida into a battleground. On July 11th, 1979, a group of Blanco's gunmen carried out a daring assassination at Crown Liquor Store, shooting a notorious drug dealer. They chased store employees through the mall, creating a chilling scene straight out of a movie. The assassins arrived in an armored delivery truck named Happy Time Complete Supply Party, with steel plates on the sides featuring shooting holes, turning the vehicle into a tool of crime. Blanco's assassinations instilled such terrifying fear even among fellow drug lords. As one expert put it, while other criminals killed for specific purposes, Blanco did the opposite. She'd kill first and then say, "Oh, he was innocent. Too bad, but now he's dead." Jorge Ayala, her most loyal henchman, stated that whenever Blanco ordered an assassination, everyone around was in danger. No one was spared. Neither women nor children could escape her deadly wrath. Blanco's power peaked in the 1980s with a billion-dollar drug empire, smuggling 1,500 kg of cocaine into the U.S. every month. However, law enforcement agencies were constantly tracking her. Eventually, the DEA caught up with her, and she was sentenced to 20 years in prison. In 1994, Blanco received a major shock when her most trusted lieutenant, Ayala, betrayed her in a murder case. Ayala had enough evidence to put her in the electric chair, but a scandal disrupted the case, discrediting Ayala. As a result, Blanco avoided the death penalty and only served 6 years in prison. After her release, she was deported back to Colombia, where no one welcomed her. With too many enemies, she had nowhere to hide. On September 3rd, 2012, at the age of 69, Blanco was shot twice in the head outside a butcher shop in Medellin. Her death was executed in the same manner she had used to kill so many others. It remains unclear who ordered the hit. Many suspect drug cartels, while others believe it could have been a relative seeking revenge for one of her victims. Either way, with so many enemies, it is difficult to determine who was truly behind the death of the queen of cocaine. The story of Griselda Blanco, one of the most controversial figures in drug trafficking history, is not just a tragedy, but a grim reminder of the brutality and dangers of the underworld. On January 11th, 2020, what should have been the happiest day in Karim Lisbeth Yepes Ortiz's life turned into an unimaginable nightmare. As she exchanged vows with her infamous drug lord husband El Calamardo, no one expected their happiness to be shattered by violence. In the middle of their romantic ceremony, a group of armed men stormed the church, bringing death and chaos. The scene turned into utter mayhem as Karim collapsed to the ground in agonizing despair, severely wounded, while her husband was dragged away by the attackers amidst the panicked crowd. El Calamardo was not only known as a drug lord, but was also the cause of a brutal war between criminal organizations in Mexico. Karim, the sister of another notorious drug lord, belonged to a family deeply involved in conflicts with the CJNG, Mexico's most powerful and ruthless crime syndicate. This savage assassination shocked the nation, even one so accustomed to violence beyond tolerance. Wedding guests fled in terror, leaving behind dead bodies and chaos. The CJNG killers, dressed in body armor, bearing their infamous logo, showed no mercy. They shot anyone in their way, even killing an innocent boy on a motorcycle outside the church, a barbaric act that sent shivers across the country. The mastermind behind this bloody attack was none other than El Blanco, a dangerous enemy embroiled in a brutal war with Karim's brother, Jose Antonio Yepes Ortiz, also known as El Maro. El Maro was the leader of the Santa Rosa de Lima cartel, a gang specialized in stealing fuel from pipelines in Guanajuato. The war between these two groups began when a banner appeared in Guanajuato, threatening the president of Mexico that more bloodshed would occur if security forces were not withdrawn from the state. The banner was signed by the Santa Rosa de Lima cartel, but El Maro quickly denied responsibility, accusing El Mencho of setting a trap for him. Clearly, El Mencho did not take kindly to having his name mentioned and was determined to wipe out El Maro's gang, seizing the territory he coveted. This wedding massacre was a powerful message sent to El Maro, who had left his sister in a horrific situation. After the incident, CJNG continuously released videos mocking El Maro for his cowardice, which left him feeling humiliated and terrified. Since then, El Maro has gone into hiding, and no one knows his whereabouts. Those who once knew him doubt he will ever resurface. Not much can be expected from someone who fled to save his life, abandoning his own sister in the midst of such a storm of violence and death. The story of Karim and El Mencho has only just begun, but the tension and drama of the fierce war between these underground forces are already palpable, where blood and tears never cease to flow. Jocelyn Alejandra Nino, nicknamed La Flaca, stood in front of the camera with a sweet smile, holding a gun and wearing a bulletproof vest. However, that smile was just a mask hiding the dark world she was about to face. When her photo suddenly went viral on social media, her identity was exposed and a nightmare began. La Fleca, meaning the skinny girl in Spanish, was a name given to her by the Gulf cartel due to her slender but mysterious figure. This nickname also had connections to Nuestra Señora de la Santa Muerte, the skeletal saint revered in the drug trafficking world. But the name Flaca carried not only gentleness, but also the mark of a curse. Two other female assassins who bore this name had met tragic and striking fear into those who knew it. In the criminal world of Mexico, women like Jocelyn are often recruited by gangs, not only for their alluring appearance, but also for their hidden potential. They often start with menial tasks like guarding or prostitution, but sooner or later, they become ruthless killers. On January 5th, 2015, Jocelyn's fate was sealed. An anonymous user leaked her smiling photo to the citizen-run news site Valorpor, Tamaulipas, known for reporting on security and crime. The photo quickly became the center of attention on Facebook and Twitter, exposing Jocelyn as an assassin for the Gulf cartel operating in Valorpor, Tamaulipas. She appeared innocent, but the gun in her hand said otherwise. The investigation swiftly revealed that the leak originated from Los Metros, a rival gang fighting for control. Their goal was to weaken Los Ciclones, the group Jocelyn belonged to, making her a target for subsequent attacks. Jocelyn, one of the protectors of her group, knew that her mission would become even more dangerous as Los Metros controlled most of the area. On April 12, 2015, Jocelyn and two other members of Los Ciclones were captured by Los Metros. That was the last time anyone saw her alive. The next day, Mexican authorities in Matamoros, Tamaulipas, discovered a horrifying scene. Jocelyn's dismembered body stuffed in a cooler in the parking lot of a soda shop. Her remains were found in plastic bags, but she wasn't alone. The bodies of another woman and a man were also dismembered, showing clear signs of torture, likely used to extract information from the unfortunate victims. The only way authorities could identify Jocelyn was through the Nino tattoo on her forearm. The brutality of Los Metros didn't stop there. They boasted about their gruesome spoils on Twitter, posting images of the dismembered bodies as a threatening message to Jocelyn's group. One of the pictures showed Jocelyn bruised, lying beside two other victims before they were dismembered. Another photo displayed her body parts stuffed into a cooler next to the other corpses. Los Metros sent a chilling warning to Los Ciclones with a brutal message. This is the fate of all the scum who support Los Ciclones. This warning not only insulted her group, but also threatened a bloodbath if they dared to trespass on their territory. But the most intriguing part is that Jocelyn wasn't just any assassin. With her strength and determination, she had become a drug queen, crossing many lines and creating numerous enemies, even within the police force. Now those enemies weren't only seeking to eliminate her, but also to destroy everything she had built. Beneath her sweet smile, the truth behind La Flaca was a never-ending battle, where lives were threatened with every passing moment. On January 10th, 2020, a horrifying video shook the internet. Footage of a woman bleeding heavily and gasping for air. That woman was none other than Maria Guadalupe Lopez Esquivel, known as La Catrina, a notorious assassin of the CJNG cartel. Her tragic fate was captured in one haunting final moment, when Mexican authorities stormed a safe house where she was hiding with other gunmen. A life-or-death shootout ensued. Footage from the raid showed La Catrina gravely wounded, collapsing behind a wall, her face and clothes stained with blood. In a desperate moment, she reached toward the camera, as if pleading for a life slipping away from her grasp. Flashback to October 14th, 2019, when La Catrina led a group of gunmen in a fierce attack on police officers in a town near Aguililla. The officers had no idea they were walking into a deadly trap set by her. The grisly scene after the attack showed many police officers lying motionless while their vehicles were riddled with bullets from heavy weapons. This attack left at least 9 officers injured, while La Catrina and her accomplices quickly fled. They left behind a banner with 2 messages, one claiming responsibility for the massacre and another threatening officers collaborating with rival cartels. But everything took a turn on January 10th. According to local media, someone tipped off authorities about La Catrina's presence in the safe house. Police immediately launched a raid, and during the intense gunfight, La Katrina was shot in the neck. The footage from the raid painted a chilling picture. La Katrina lying on the ground, writhing in pain, fighting for her life. An officer tried to comfort her. "Calm down, girl. The helicopter is coming. It's coming now. Easy, easy. You'll be okay. Hang in there." But that comfort seemed meaningless in the face of death. Meanwhile, other members of CJNG tried to block authorities from retreating, forcing the military to call for helicopter support. Another video showed a soldier carrying La Katrina kneeling on the ground before placing her in the waiting helicopter. But it was too late. She passed away just minutes after the helicopter took off. So how did a young assassin like La Katrina end up in such a tragic situation? The name La Katrina comes from the skeletal figure symbolizing Mexico's Day of the Dead, and she was a high-ranking member of the CJNG cartel. In 2017, she left her hometown of Topolcatepec and met Miguel LM2 Fernandez, one of the cartel's leaders. She fell in love with him, joined the gang, and quickly rose through the ranks under his guidance, living a luxurious life in the criminal world. However, as is often the case in the dangerous underworld of cartel gangs, that glamorous life didn't last long. La Katrina was only 21 years old when she met her painful death. A tragic end to a life woven with dreams and ambition, but cut short by inevitable violence. Her life wasn't just a personal tragedy, but a grim reflection of Mexico's drug war, where dreams are buried beneath rivers of blood. Feel free to share your opinions in the comments below. Don't forget to support us by liking this video and subscribing to our channel. See you in the next one.